applies for a dog along with a trainer assigned to facilitate essential services. He also assists in searching for appropriate dogs for veterans and consulting when training issues arise. A very wonderful commitment, dedication. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker today, Bob Horrell.
Thank you all for coming today to honor those that made the ultimate sacrifice and made days like this possible for us. Before I start, I want to introduce my buddy here. This is Paws, spelled P-A-W-S. Before I started working training dogs for veterans, he's a friendly sort. I used to volunteer at shelters, and I'd go into a shelter and I'd work with the dogs that they deemed untrainable, unadoptable, and you know what happens to those dogs. And I'd see if I could turn them around and make it so they could have a life. He was one of those dogs. He was one of my tougher projects. But I kept him because I noticed something about him that I'd never seen in the other dogs I'd worked with. He had the ability to read situations, to read people, to read other animals, like no other dog I worked with. And so after kind of a rough start, well, I named him Paws because it sounds like, it's P-A-W-S, but it sounds like the word pause, P-A-U-S-E. So that every time I said his name, it would remind me to take my time. And it's paid off. He's now a registered certified therapy dog. And we work primarily with veterans, and we work with autistic kids. And he does things with those kids that I can't teach. He just knows what to do and when to do it. It's just amazing watching him. He also helps me train the dogs for the veterans. I can get it done in half the time with him. They learn a lot faster from him than they ever will a human. Now, what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about a way that we can honor those that we're here for today. You know, when we see a veteran that has physical wounds, is missing a limb or something, it's kind of easy to tell, you know, what he might be going through in his life. But it's those invisible injuries that often are so traumatic, and it's something we can't see. I'm going to talk about a couple of those today. One of them is traumatic brain injury, known as TBI. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's not unlike what our professional football players are going through now. We're finding out later in life they have severe problems due to the concussions that they endured. Our most recent guys coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, they've been exposed to IEDs, explosive devices that cause the same kind of mental trauma. But that's a little bit easier to understand than the other one, which is PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I'll start out by saying I don't like the D word. Disorder doesn't belong there, and I'll explain why. And I like the way I was introduced as somebody that works with soldiers that have post-traumatic stress syndrome. That's a lot better to me. You'll understand why in a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like for a guy that comes back. You know, something like 22 guys a day are committing suicide. And you wonder, why is that? And I've had people say, why is this so bad now? I never heard about this before in the other wars. Well, I'm here to tell you, it was just as bad back then. Nobody paid attention. Nobody cared. Nobody counted. They didn't know post-traumatic stress back then. They called it shell shock, battle fatigue. There were other names for it. I know in my own personal family, I lost an uncle to suicide from World War II. And my wife lost her brother from Vietnam. Ironically, I didn't know him then, but he was over there 2 years after me doing the same operation I was doing. So what is this post-traumatic stress? Well, any of us could get it if we had a severe enough trauma. There's a little bit of a difference, though, between civilian post-traumatic stress and military post-traumatic stress. You see, a civilian one, not always, but oftentimes is caused by a singular traumatic event. For a combat veteran, there's probably a multitude of those spread out over an extended period of time with a number of different implications. Makes it very difficult to deal with. So what I want to do today is I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like for the guy to come back. You'd think, well, gee, the war's over for him now. He's come back here. Why can't he just get on with his life? Well, I'm hoping when we're done today, you'll understand why it's so hard. I remember when I was in Vietnam, I couldn't wait to get back. I couldn't wait to come back to that place that was familiar, that was comfortable, that was safe, where I could kind of regroup, get my thoughts together, and figure out how I was going to go on from there. So finally, I come back. Finally, I get home. Wow, was I surprised. It wasn't all like I expected. Everything had changed. It wasn't familiar. It didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel safe. Well, actually, nothing here had changed. I changed. I wasn't the same person when I got back that I was when I left. So now there's this huge gap that exists between where I was when I got back and where I needed to be to go on with my life. How was I going to bridge that gap? Where do I start? What do I do? So what I want to talk about is a scenario I've come up with that I can describe that might help you guys to understand what that could feel like. So I want you to we're going to do a little role playing. I want you to go along with me here. Put yourself in this situation I'm going to describe and think about how you'd feel. First thing I want you to do is take a second here. Think of some of your closest friends. Now, if you have those friends in mind, we'll start. So you leave your house this morning, and you're traveling across town with these close friends of yours, and you get in this horrific accident. Your friends don't make it. Somehow you do. But you witnessed their last breaths, and there's nothing you could do about it. Imagine how your life would change. Imagine how things that were important to you this morning when you left the house suddenly have no meaning and are replaced by things that you never really gave that much thought about before. And the guilt that you feel. This is a problem all these veterans have, survivor guilt. Why did they make it when their buddies didn't? And the second guessing. Even if you didn't cause the accident, the thought you'd have about the immediate things that happened before that. What if I did this, or I didn't do that, or this happened, or that didn't happen? For the rest of your life, you'll be thinking about those things and how there could have been a different outcome. And so now, your day's winding down. You've been checked by the medical people. They say you're good. You can go home. You're done with your police reports. So now you're in a rental car. You're going to your house, to your home, to that place where you'll be comfortable. That place is familiar. That place is safe. Where you can start to think about how you're going to go on with your life now. Because isn't it all the same as it was when you left your house this morning? And so you turn on your block. You drive up, you look over at your house, and while you were gone, it burnt to the ground. Imagine the feeling. Where's home? Where do you go? Where do you belong? That's how these guys feel when they get back. Now imagine if somebody came up to you, I'm going to digress a minute here. Somebody came up to you at that point and said, you know what? You have a disorder. The disorder would be if you didn't feel the way you were feeling. That's natural, depending, or counting the circumstances, the thing that got you to that point. The disorder would be if you didn't feel the way you were feeling. Now, the reason I have a problem with that is there's a lot of veterans that won't come forward. A lot of guys especially. They don't want to be labeled as having an emotional disorder. It goes against our ego. Another thing it does, puts a stigma on them. Might make it hard to get a job in the future. Who wants to hire somebody that has a disorder? So let's call it anything else. Call it a syndrome, but don't call it a disorder. So now let's go back to that scenario. So here you are, after this horrible day, worst day of your life, sitting in front of a place that no longer feels like a home. No wonder 22 guys a day are committing suicide. The emptiness, the loneliness, frustration, anger, depression. Now, if you're lucky, you still have some friends left. They might be able to help you get through this time in your life, in the next weeks, months, years, help you figure out how to get back to somewhere close to where you were when you left your house this morning. Not so much for the veteran. You see, he has a hard time making friends. He has a hard time rekindling old friendships. And you might wonder, why is this? Well, it has to do with what we call the moral injury. That's best described as a saying that goes like this. There's rules for civilian life, and there's rules for war. And they should never be mixed. But for a combat veteran, they do get mixed. And once they're mixed, they never again separate. There's things that you do and witness and experience in war that haunt you for the rest of your life. And so there's this feeling when it comes to making new friends or rekindling old friendships, that there's this fear of judgment, that if people knew what I did, if they knew what really happened, they wouldn't want to be my friend. Besides that, why would I want to make another friend? What if they died? I don't want to go through that again. Now, in addition to that, there's this constant feeling, this constant reminder of things they want to forget. Every day there's things that remind them of their past. It's not that they can't get rid of their past can't get rid of them. There's another thing we'll call purpose. Everybody needs a purpose in their life. Now, I don't care what that veteran thought his purpose in life was before he joined the military. It's sure to change by the time he gets out. You see, the military is a very purposeful organization. There's a purpose for everything you do. There's a purpose for your boot camp. There's a purpose for your specialized training after that. There's a purpose for your training for a mission. There's a purpose for the mission 24/7. Everything you do in the military has a purpose. Now you're out. You're back over here. You don't have any friends. You have a hard time making friends. You're having problems with your past. And you don't have a purpose. So what I ask you guys today is to think about a way that we can honor those that didn't make it back with us. And that's by helping those that did make it back. Those that are struggling every day. Their brothers and sisters that are here struggling every day to learn how to be a civilian again. There's all kinds of volunteer organizations that have sprung up that are trying to help. And a lot of them are doing a lot of good. But they need help. If you can donate money, boy, full of volunteers still costs a lot of money to provide the services these guys need. If you can't do that, you can volunteer some time. In addition to helping out, it makes that veteran know you care, and that's important. Now, what I did is I aligned myself with a group that helps veterans with animals, because I found in my life that was a huge help to me. And so I am affiliated with an organization called MAP, Military Animal Project. What we do at MAP is we do three things. We provide dogs like Paws here that are therapy dogs that can help veterans that are struggling in therapy sessions, struggling dealing with the things, not able to talk about it. It's amazing what the dogs can do. We provide emotional support dogs or service dogs to veterans that need it, depending on what their therapist prescribes for them. We also have an equine therapy program that does terrific thing for these guys, because that horse mirrors what's inside of them, and before they can make that close connection, they got to deal with what's bothered them inside. It gives them insight to the things they need to work on. Now, there's a lot of other organizations. That's just one way of doing it. Find one that fits with you, that fits with your passion in life, and try to help. Now, I want to tell you, from my personal experience, ways in which a dog can help this situation. That dog can become that friend that that veteran so desperately needs, and that dog comes without judgment. That dog didn't care what he did in the past. All that dog cares about is that relationship in the now. And the now is an important word. You see, if a veteran's stuck in his past, he can't move forward. He has to be in the now before he can take those steps. The dogs live in the now. They don't care about yesterday. They don't worry about tomorrow. They live in the now, today. And they help the veteran do that. They also give that veteran that sense of somebody watching his back. And last but not least, they give him a purpose. You see, that dog needs him as much as he needs that dog. So in that morning, when that veteran's laying in bed and he just can't get up, he's depressed, and he's stuck in his past because he had a night full of bad dreams, and he doesn't even want to get up. That dog comes up, sticks that cold, wet nose on his cheek, as if to say, hey, buddy, remember me? You know what? I gotta pee. Besides that, it's morning, and I'm hungry, and remember, we were gonna play ball and take a walk. What does that veteran do? He leaves that past he's stuck in. He transfers to the now. He gets up, he takes his dog out to relieve himself. He feeds him, he takes him for a walk. What's he done? He's taken those first steps that are so hard to take to get on that bridge and start bridging that gap. And you all know when you've got something difficult to do, the first steps are the hardest. Once you get going, the rest of them come a little bit easier. So I ask you again, think about what you can do to help these guys that have come back. I know if these guys could speak from the grave, they'd ask you for that. They'd want the ones that survived to have a better life. These organizations make a big difference. They do help. Like I tell the veterans I work with, think of this as a mission. Post-traumatic stress isn't curable, doesn't go away, but you can learn to live with it. People are going to offer you tools, just like you had tools to go on a mission. Use those tools, embrace them, work at it. It can get better. You can have a good life. I'm proof of that. Thank you.